And welcome back to another daily devotion. I'm Pastor Roy here at Woodlawn Christian Church in Lake City, Iowa, and this devotion is for Tuesday, July 25th of 2023. We are just about through with the book of Second Corinthians. We are in chapter 12. Today we're going to look at verses 14 to 18. I decided I'm going to leave 19 through 21 for tomorrow, and then the next day we will probably take care of probably the entirety of chapter 13. And then Friday, maybe I will look at a synopsis or a review, rather, of both 1st and 2nd Corinthians. But we'll see. Or maybe I'll just do 2nd Corinthians. Who knows? But at any rate, for today, we just want to look at 14 to 18. That's what we're doing today. But I do want to back up and pick up verse 13. Because I think it's important to pick that up because sometimes these verses 14 through 18, specifically 14 and 15, are used by people to say that pastors shouldn't be paid. That Paul's saying here that pastors shouldn't collect a salary, and that's not at all what Paul's saying. You need to remember back to what we've said before. Paul was contesting with the super apostles. That part of the argument was that they were saying, apparently, why we are inferring that from his answering or his rebuttal to them on whatever the actual question was, but we infer it from that. That part of what they were accusing him of was not being worth getting the salary because he wasn't being paid by them, but he was being paid. He was being supported by the church in Macedonia and others. Paul often worked doing tent making, but he was getting support at various times and maybe all the time by some of the churches were supporting him. Maybe not quite enough to support him entirely because he was doing a lot of moving around. But at any rate, it's not like he's not being supported. And that was part of the argument here was that, again, that the super apostles, these guys that are contending with him, that are competing with him here, trying to supplant him here in Corinth, were saying he wasn't worth any, couldn't be any good because he wasn't charging you. You get what you pay for. Yeah, it's just very true. So he must not be worth much. So certainly, this is not saying, Paul's not saying that here. But at any rate, let's back up to verse 13 and pick up there and go through 18. For in what way were you less favored than the rest of the churches, except that I myself did not burden you? Forgive me this wrong. Here for the third time I am ready to come to you, and I will not be a burden, for I seek not what is yours, but you. For children ought not to lay up for their parents, but parents for their children. I will most gladly spend and be spent for your souls. If I love you, the more am I to be loved the less. But granting that I myself did not burden you, I was crafty, you say. I got the better of you by guile. Did I take advantage of you through any of those whom I sent to you? I urged Titus to go and sent the brother with him. Did Titus take advantage of you? Did he not act in the same spirit? Did we not take the same steps? Okay, part of the problem we have here is, again, we are dealing with response letters from Paul. We don't know, as I mentioned, I think earlier in this devotion, we don't know exactly what was being said to him. What exactly are they accusing him of being crafty and deceiving them by guile? I'm not sure we can know that. But here for the third time. He's planning to go to see them for the third time. First time he was there for a year and a half. Remember, 18 months was what the term that he was there with them in the beginning, which was longer than normal. We talked about that in yesterday's devotion. Probably the longest time that Paul was in any church was Corinth. 18 months is a fairly long duration for him. It wouldn't be a ministry today, but was for Paul. But I digress. He's going to come to him third time. There for 18 months. The next time was the painful visit, which it seems to have been very short. We don't know. I don't think we know the timeline or the time duration rather, but it appears to have been a very quick and not pleasant. Thus the painful visit. And Paul's going to come back to him again, it appears. This is his desire, at least, at this point. But what he's saying to them, he's not going to be a burden to them again. You're not going to expect them to pay for him. He's still being supported by somebody, some third party. Um, and then he talks about this here where it says, "For children ought not to lay up for their parents, but parents for their children." Some would take that, I think, is more they're getting that idea that you don't, the people being ministered to aren't paying the minister. Well, he's talking about children. When your children are little, they're not earning money to support you. You're supporting them. You're caring for them. So this is not, and this is not a compliment to them. This is him being a bit snarky. If you didn't catch that he was snarky back in verse 13 at the end, forgive me this wrong. Paul's being a little bit. He's getting a little ticked. Let's put it that way, and it's coming through in his writing. He's a little miffed. Let's use that word. Miffed sounds nicer. He's a little miffed at them, a little upset with them. That's probably the proper word. Maybe not the most descriptive, but he's put out, and it's coming through. So he's kind of insulting them by saying this inference about children, because it's not as if the children don't take care of the parents in their old age. In that culture, the children were expected, once they were adults and the parents were elderly, to care for their parents, especially the mother. If the father passed, the oldest boy would be responsible for his mama, and he was supposed to be taking care of her. But the children, and if he passed, and passed down the line, likewise, they were taking care of their parents. That would have been the tradition. So that wouldn't be something to me that, in my understanding, that wouldn't negate the idea of being paid for ministry in any way, shape, or fashion. But rather, the thing that I see here that I would rather talk about, we've talked about that enough, is that there's something going on here. Somebody's accusing him of something. And whether it's those super apostles have started it, but somebody within the church, it appears, we can infer that from what he's saying there, I think, relatively safely, but somebody's stirring up some trouble for Paul, and saying something that's just not true. But granted, I myself did not burden you. I was crafty, you say, and got the better of you by guile. Somebody's accused him of something. Falsely is what it would appear. And I think that many of us can understand that feeling that someone has made a false accusation to us, even whether it be a friend or family. I apologize, for some reason my throat's bothering me. But certainly if you're in ministry, sad to say, you're going to have a time or two when somebody makes up something out of the whatever, ether of time and space, where they're going to come up with something that they're going to throw out there into the community, or into the church, just it would seem strictly to try to stir up trouble for the pastor or for another member. Oftentimes it's the minister. But that happens, and how do we deal with that? How are we to address that? Just as we were talking about, the unappreciativeness yesterday of those, for I ought to have been commended by you, but he's not being commended by them. They're contesting with him after all that he's done. So that lack of respect, that lack of appreciation, and now we've got this even further betrayal of apparently somebody making up some kind of gossip, some malicious rumor about him. How do we deal with that? Gosh, and guess what? I'm going to do to you again what I did yesterday. You're going to have to wait till tomorrow or the next to see what Paul did, because we're getting close to the end of the letter, and I don't want to spill the beans or spoil the plot. So, without a plot, the plot thickens, I guess we should say. Come back tomorrow and the next and find out how Paul ends up this letter to the church in Corinth. Please, if you do enjoy these devotions, like and subscribe. We'd love to have you back with us again. If you want to make a kind comment, please make a kind comment. Don't insult poor Pastor Roy, or hurt, rather, poor Pastor Roy's feelings by any means. I jest. But at any rate, we do enjoy you being here, or I appreciate you being here. Please come back again. Please like and share, and have a blessed day. And please be a blessing to someone today. Tell them about Jesus and how much he loves them. God bless you. God loves you. Bye-bye.